And like I said, I want to do a little bit more future given where we are and kind of a lot of what's been going on. But I wanted to get back into what you had to say about kind of, not in the spirit of that question, but reading the room when it comes to, or understanding what makes, and we've had conversations about a guy like Steve Bannon, right? And Steve Bannon kind of helped build Donald Trump, his facade. Again, these things are lies. Yeah. But what in this moment, when you see so much of the right turning on itself, do you think, and it is, Trump was going after Tucker Carlson, he's going after Megyn Kelly. What do you think when you sit down and have a conversation with someone like Ben Shapiro? Like, what was your takeaway from that in terms of what do we need to be talking about? What do we need to be saying? Certainly not on the policy, but in the framing and in the reaching people and the organizing. I kind of want to get back to that. Like, as you look into the future, what has been your takeaway of a conversation with Steve Bannon, a conversation with Charlie Kirk, a conversation with Ben Shapiro?
And the guy who tried to recall me, Newt Gingrich. Frank Luntz, I'm talking about framing and messaging. Those are not the only guests I have on this show, quite the contrary. And by the way, I say this to folks all the time. No one has to tune in. I'm just trying to, I sincerely am trying to understand motivation. I'm trying to understand what we're actually up against. I've always believed, and a big part of this book, I'm a small business guy, started right out of college, pen to paper, a part-time employee, Pat Kelly, and I grew the business, about 21 small businesses, about 1,000 employees. I say that to not impress any of you, but to impress upon you this notion, my passion for entrepreneurialism and iteration. I believe in failing forward fast, not being reckless, but taking risks. Same-sex marriage, perfect example of that. I think it's one of the reasons we're the only state in the country that has universal health care regardless of pre-existing conditions, ability to pay, and your immigration status. I've been condemned for that, but we do it. That's why we have $25 minimum wage for health care workers in my state. That's why you can bet insulin for $11. We're willing to take on big fights in all of those categories. And we, get muffed up too. I mean, I get, take the hits. But I've always believed in the context of looking. Success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. Why did we get, this guy, Donald, how did Donald Trump win? How did we lose 7 swing states? Right? And all of us have opinions on that. I'm up to 27 pages of your opinions and my opinions. I'm not, by the way, someone thought I was kidding, and I had a member of the press come in. She said, Jesus, 27 pages. And so much of it contradicts, the pundit before it. I still feel like we need to do a forensics. I don't think we've done enough.
Well, we're holding one. The DNC's holding one back,
and they're holding it back. And
do you think we should put that out there?
I put it all out there.
Put it out there.
But it's just because, look, continue to do what you've done, you'll get what you got. And that's why I said, for things to change, we have to change. And so I think that's important. I mean, look, I've had, we've had 100 guests on the show and have some really wonderful.
And I did you a disservice framing it as just like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro.
Like, Jesus, who the hell is this guy?
We got Ben Meiselas, we got Keith Edwards, it's okay.
No, and I'm out there at TwitchCon. I'm meeting with gamers and streamers. I'm doing Fortnite Fridays.
Would you go on Hasan's show, Twitch? Speaking of which, Hasan Piker, you might.
Yeah, which I've said in the past. And the point is, I'm trying to absorb. I'm trying to understand the world I'm living in. And what are the trend lines that define the world we're living in? And I think it's incredibly important to do that. I spent all my post-reelection time on the road, if I've been out of the state, in red states. I was down in Mississippi. I was down there in Kentucky. Not Kentucky. I went to Arkansas first. And then, we spent a lot of time down in the South trying to sort of understand why the Democratic Party walked away. Back to where's my party? We were in the majority in a lot of those legislatures in 2010, not 1910. It wasn't that long ago. And now we kind of walked away from it. So I'm trying to walk down the path that some others are not, because I think it's important to do that. And I think that's what you do when you're dyslexic. I can't do it the way you all do it. I have to do it a little bit differently. And in that process, there's a lot of judgment, a lot of doubt, a lot of self-doubt. But there's a willingness to constantly seek to understand the world I'm living in before I'm ultimately understood. And that's an important journey. I think it's an important journey for politicians too. I really want to be open to argument. I want to be interested in evidence. It doesn't mean I'm changing my positions. Sometimes things radically change. Marriage equality to me was important. Why? Because I couldn't argue separate was equal. The whole debate in 2004 was civil unions. I'm like, wait, but you're a Democrat and you're supporting separate is equal now? My desk at the governor's office is a guy named Warren's desk. Former governor, former Chief Justice. Warren. It's a reminder that separate is not equal. And it's a reminder of our role and responsibility. And at that time, my role and responsibility to my truth. My truth is to stand up for ideals. My why, stand up for ideals and strike out against injustice. Back to me being a Sarge Shriver Democrat. The Kennedy we all forgot about. The guy who created VISTA, Legal Aid to the Poor. The person that ran the war on poverty when we actually reduced poverty in this country for a short period of time. The Special Olympics, the Peace Corps. We have the largest service corps in America in my state. It's larger than the Peace Corps. I think that's one of the ways we knit back this country, shared experiences. And by the way, when I swear in, we require 450 hours of work. We'll give you $10,000 for your college education. And it's one of the biggest programs of its type anywhere. It's certainly the biggest in the nation. And, you know, I believe in that. And I don't, no one there is, I'm not asking them, are your dad a Republican, your mom, you Republican, you Democrat? Will you support? It's shared experiences, you know. And you start to realize everyone wants to be loved. We all need to be loved. You know, we all want to be protected and respected and connected to something bigger than ourselves. And that's the spirit, despite the fact I'm punching back. And I guess, yes, I'm punching back. And I'll take a backseat to no one in terms of holding the line and punching back. But yes, it goes back to what I said in the outset. We're all looking forward to the moment. Because
when it happens.
Yeah, just like, yeah.
We can clap for when it happens.
You know, yeah. Well, no, it's just because that stacking of stress. I mean, everything you guys talk about, grace and humility. I mean, I talk about my recall. You know, you think, how's your day? You know, getting hundreds of thousands of people, and you know, every coffee store there's 10 people. Get rid of this new scum guy. You know, the whole thing. And you know, and so you get through those things and you start to and realize how temporary this all is. So grace, humility, you know, and just, you know, try to do better, try to be better. And that's the story of a bit of my life. And I'm continuing, you know, I want to continue to write, you know, what is it? O mio life, Whitman, right? He talks about the powerful play goes on. And may we all contribute a verse. And I think, you know, New Hampshire contributes that verse, not just every 4 years, but in a profound and outsized way. But all of us can contribute a verse. And I think that's, you know, that's what I'm trying to communicate in this. And, you know, I realized through the process of writing, you don't have to be something to do something. Back to the pose, back to the mask I put on. I always thought I had to be something to do something. And it's about using your moral authority, the spirit of gay marriage, not just your formal authority. And all of us have that in abundance. Donald Trump? No. You don't even know what that is. And, you know, I just, and forgive me, I know our time's limited, but just a special thing for me, I never met Ambassador Young. So lucky. I'm going to be at Jesse Jackson's memorial tomorrow, and I likely will see him again, but I was down in Atlanta. And, you know, Chief of Staff for Martin Luther King. And he was telling me these amazing stories. It was like the most amazing hour. I'm like just literally just smiling. And he's all these, and Jack, this is like the stuff for us. Like, you know, these are the heroes. And he's talking about Martin Luther King and, you know, visiting him in jail the 5th time, all thing. But I didn't understand, and forgive me, how deeply enshrined the values of Gandhi were. in the context of that movement. Obviously, nonviolent and passive, but I didn't understand how integrated that was to the degree I came out of that meeting. But I also came out of the meeting in the spirit of what I was just saying, thinking about the fact that we don't celebrate President Martin Luther King Day. They don't celebrate in India, former Prime Minister Gandhi Day. I don't celebrate in California, former Governor Cesar Chavez Day. And you start thinking about, and even it proves my age, I even think about guys like Havel and the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia. You think, even Mandela, just short 4-year term. What he's defined by is not his time in office. What all those folks, frankly, are defined by is their time in jail. They all shared that at their peak of their influence. They all shared that in common. But it was their ability to exercise their moral authority. And that's at the core of this corruption story that is Trump.
Yeah.
At the core of the American story, this is the issue that we need to restore. To restore the soul of America, we need to restore the morality that defines the best of America. And that's what it's all about right now, is reigniting that and finding that again.
Yes.